So I was watching TV tonight, and I somehow stumbled onto a show on EWTN. I didn't know what EWTN was, nor had I ever heard of it, but apparently it's the church channel, the Christian channel, I guess. I thought those channels just showed ridiculous televangelists and televised mass for shut-ins or whatever, but well, I flipped to this channel while surfing for something to watch, and there was a show on called Cutting Through the Spin on Stem Cells and Cloning. And apparently I'm a glutton for punishment because I watched nearly the entire thing. On this show, a guy named Father Tad Pacholczyk, Pacholczyk, something like that. Father Tad was standing at a podium in front of a small audience in a conference room of some sort, doing a presentation that involved a PowerPoint slideshow. He was going through 7 or so myths regarding stem cell research and cloning that the scientific community and people in favor of this research in general would have you believe. And he was, quote, debunking them one by one. It was about as I would expect from a Catholic priest or any Christian advocate, for the most part. It's like, here are the facts, here are what the scientists would have you believe, but here's the truth. Surprisingly, he didn't talk about God's will or being damned to hell or much anything like that. He did talk about moral and ethical implications and whatnot, but his tactics here were to appear like an objective yet knowledgeable voice on the topic. He tried his best to appear objective, but it's hard to do that when you're literally wearing the uniform of a Catholic priest, which he was. Nevertheless, it was sort of informative until he put his spin on each point of the presentation. He would say something like, here's the list of diseases that may be cured if we can use stem cells, and the list was like 3 pages long. Then he would say, but here is the list of diseases that have to have embryonic stem cells specifically in order to cure them. And the list would be empty with the big word 0 on the screen. Well, all in all, it was pretty tolerable anyhow. I was able to keep my dinner down amidst the mild insanity that he was spewing. But then one of his final points was this. He showed an image of a human embryo, magnified with an electron microscope or something, sitting upon the very tip of a sewing needle. He pointed out how you could see the details in the embryo, and even though it was very small, this was in fact a human life. He said, it is a simple fact that scientists somehow cannot admit that an embryo such as the one on this image is exactly the same as a full-grown adult human, such as you or I. He went on to say that just because it is very small and does not have a voice of its own, is not a reason for us to be able to hack this embryo into bits for the sake of making stem cells to cure diseases. This is the part that made me nearly smash my TV, because I know that the idiots out there will go, that's a good point. Screw the people who are alive now. We need to make sure nobody touches our embryos. Well, I'm probably the only person in the country who is actually watching this show who doesn't already think that stem cell research is the work of Satan himself. So maybe those people watching don't really need much convincing anyhow. But this country has a lot of idiots in it who can be easily swayed by idiot propaganda, and Father Tad ranks right up there with Adolf Hitler in the propaganda department. Maybe I should make a PowerPoint slideshow that illustrates an objective comparison between Father Tad and Adolf Hitler. If I'm half as good as Father Tad, I bet I can convince at least a few hundred morons that Father Tad is trying to exterminate the Jews. But I digress. So anyway, in the image, an embryo is sitting on the tip of a needle, and it is exactly the same as you. Right now, there's an embryo sitting in front of a computer somewhere watching YouTube, just like you are. Although the embryo is probably a lot more pissed off while watching this. He'll probably get the feeling that I'm running a smear campaign on his little embryo-y self. So, destroying an embryo for any purpose is unquestionably the same as killing an adult human being. So here's my creative comparison to help debunk that little statement. Let's say you take a single 2x4 out into a field and stick it into the dirt so that it stands straight up. Then in another field just next to the first field, you have a fabulous 4-bedroom brick house built with a wraparound deck and Spanish roof tiles and a beautiful bay window right in front. Inside the house, you have spared no expense to install the finest fixtures and cabinetry and oak hardwood floors. After the 2x4 is stuck into the dirt and after the glorious home next door is completed, I stroll up and walk over to the 2x4. I push it with my finger and it falls over and quietly thumps to the ground. Then, I walk next door to your beautiful house, slosh 20 gallons of kerosene all through the inside, and throw a lit cigarette into a window while laughing maniacally. According to Father Tad, you will have completely equal emotions regarding my actions on both of your pieces of land. Morally, ethically, and legally speaking, tipping over a solitary piece of wood is no different than torching a finished four-bedroom home. You, society, and God himself should be just as angry with both of my acts. Never mind that tipping over a few thousand 2x4s could cure cancer and diabetes. It doesn't matter. I should be sent to prison and damned to hell for my wanton disregard for houses, no matter what stage of construction the home is at. To summarize, a 2x4 is undeniably the exact same as a 2,000 square foot colonial ranch. Well, that was the main part of the show that really got me irritated. However, there was another point that Father Tad tried to make that somehow made me angry and made me laugh at the same time. He was talking about how the evil scientists want to experiment on embryos that have been frozen but will go unused and end up getting thrown away. This was his point. These embryos are trapped in liquid nitrogen and they may get disregarded anyway, but that doesn't give us the right to do with them what we want because they're still human lives. Then he said something to the effect of, remember those school children in Russia a while back who were being held hostage by the terrorists? This is pretty much the same thing. We'll just adjust the story a little to illustrate this point. Now, I'm paraphrasing here, folks, but these are the exact ideas that he was throwing out there. So anyway, the terrorist who is holding the school children hostage is exactly the same as saving lives by experimenting on disregarded bits of goo in a petri dish. Okay, but here was his adjusted version of the story. Let's just say that a bunch of school children are trapped in a schoolhouse in the middle of nowhere, and a fire has broken out, and giant walls of flames are surrounding the school and moving in closer every moment. Nobody can put out the flames, and nobody can get to the children to save them. But somebody has one of those little bomb-diffusing robots that roll on tracks and are operated by remote control, and we can send in the robot through the flames and into the schoolhouse. And the robot has a mechanical arm that we can control remotely, and we can have the robot go to the children and reach out his arm and tear the useful organs right out of the screaming children and use the organs to save lives elsewhere. He said that the scientists of the world would say that, well, they were going to die anyway, so why not take what we need? Well, I will say that this was one of his only points that didn't come with a preposterous graphic of some sort, but I definitely think that he should have had a visual aid for this particular idea. Well, there you have it. Regardless of your views personally on stem cells and cloning, I think it's safe to say that anyone could be entertained by just the ridiculous notions and ideas of Father Tad and his silly slideshow, and I hope you've enjoyed my take on it, although I'm willing to bet that most of you probably haven't.